The most successful people I know are not the smartest or the ones with the most money or even the ones with the most talent. They're the people that work the hardest.
We are sitting down one-on-one with the Will Packer. I know you carry a lot of different titles, but let's go through it.
I like the. Can we just stop there? The Will Packer, that works for me.
Will Packer, CEO, businessman, entrepreneur, filmmaker, so many different accolades.
Bam.
Before we talk about Praise This, let's really talk about the success of all your films throughout the years. Grossing more than $1 billion globally. What comes to your mind as you reflect on that?
How amazing that is, and how grateful I am. I believe that I have to live in a constant state of gratitude, because when you say $1 billion, it's not just a number to me. I know every film that I made that got me to that moment. I know every no that I was told that I had to go and persist and persevere past in order to get a film made. I know every time a movie came out and people said it wasn't gonna work, and I was up against some bigger movie with bigger stars and bigger budgets, and yet we came out #1. And so I'm very grateful for this journey, and I'm very grateful also for the opportunity to tell stories, because that's what I am. I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. And so when you say that, I just have to smile, because I realize how blessed and fortunate I am.
Would you say your resilience and consistency to that discipline is the secret to your success?
I like that. I would say that, because the thing about resiliency, the most successful people I know are not the smartest or the ones with the most money or even the ones with the most talent. They're the people that work the hardest. They're the people that never gave up. That's what I am. I just never, ever gave up, and I don't plan on giving up. And that's really the key to success. People want like some kind of a magical, well, you read this book or drink this tea or do this diet. No, it's about never giving up, because you're gonna fail, and I failed. But I never gave up when I did.
That's amazing. Looking at your catalog, Think Like a Man, Girls Trip, Night School, Ride Along 1 and 2, Stomp the Yard, Photograph. What makes Praise This different? What makes it feel different for you?
Oh, it's totally different. You know, it's interesting because I made a movie called The Gospel right here in Atlanta.
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba was actually one of his first movies after he came off The Wire, his first theatrical movie. And that was a faith-based movie set in the church. It was about the church world. I also made a movie right here in Atlanta called Stomp the Yard. And Stomp the Yard was about black colleges and black fraternities and sororities, but it was under the umbrella of a dance movie, and it got people in for the dance, and then they got there and learned something about HBCUs. I see this having elements of both, in that it is a movie that's faith-based, but it's not set in the church. It's not a traditional church movie. I like to say this is for a movie for folks that haven't been to church in a while, don't know a Bible verse, but believe in faith, or maybe have lost their way and want to reconnect with their faith. And like Stomp the Yard, I want to get people in through the music, because the music in this movie is amazing. But then once you get in, I want to tell you a story about a young woman, played by Chloe Bailey, who is trying to reconnect with her faith and reconnect with her spirituality.
And I could relate to her as well in the movie, because we're all on our individual paths to find what our personal relationship is in whatever faith that we identify with. Let's talk about the infrastructure and the success of Will Packer Productions and Will Packer Media. You know, especially when we look at your other project out right now, Queen's Court. Tell me about your team and how they're able to really tell narratives that are not monolithic about the Black experience.
I love the way you said that, because that is something that's very intentional for us. We want to tell stories that are universal in nature, but that do come through a very specific lens. And I'm very proud of telling stories about, you know, Black Americans that are universal subjects. Queen's Court is my dating show. I'm very proud of the fact that we had 2 of our queens to get engaged off that show, so I'm a matchmaker. I'm here. But it's about telling different versions of these experiences, and I love telling them through a Black lens, because for very long, Hollywood was not focused on those stories, didn't see the value in those stories. There wasn't an economic imperative to tell those stories. Now you have audiences saying, I want to see myself. I want to see myself on the big screen, on the small screen, and everything in between. I take that as a very serious part of my responsibility and my privilege as a storyteller to tell stories that other folks aren't.
And it's amazing where, you know, for decades it was getting a seat at the table, but now we live in a generation, especially in the culture content space, where it's like, no, we bring in our own tables. Tell me about that audacity that we're now seeing in this generation of storytellers.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, you know, when I was first starting off as a filmmaker, it was like, how do we just find the money to buy the film, because you had to shoot everything on film, and we were like, if we can just complete a movie and get it told, we'll be winning. This generation, no. They can shoot movies on their phones. They can go get cameras, that they can afford to buy. They don't have to worry about film. And they're shooting, and shooting a lot. And a lot of it's really good. And there is an audaciousness. There's also a fearlessness that you have to have. There's so much content out there today that next generation of filmmakers, the bar is raised. It's so hard to get an audience and to get eyeballs, so you got to do something that stands out. That makes this generation of filmmakers better in a way because they have been birthed through the fire of digital and social media. It's the democracy of social media that audiences now control who's going to be the big stars, what are going to be the projects that get the most views on YouTube. Audiences control that. And so you better know your audience. You better make something good because they got a lot of options out there. By the way, same is true with me. When I think about the movies that I'm going to take on, I'm always thinking about my audience. And I'm thinking about what I'm up against and how much there's such an oversaturation of content. What am I going to do that's going to make mine stand out?
How did you stay loyal to your audience over the years when you might have been told from the Hollywood lens that there was no market for that, or they saw an undervaluing of the African American market?
Yeah, that's been the story of my career. Where they didn't see value is where I doubled down. That's the reality. When I was making some of the movies that you named that I've made, it wasn't like, these were movies where Hollywood said, yeah, we want to pour money into a film that highlights that particular audience. Until I came out and kicked everybody else's ass. And then they said, hey, give us another one. Where can we have Stomp the Yard 2 and Think Like a Man 3? And what else can you give us that's in that vein? So I'm very proud of the fact that I was making these movies and had audiences supporting me, because none of this happens without the audience support, because the audiences have the real power. I'm very proud of the fact that it was something that I always kept an eye on, never relented when it came to telling authentic stories and stories that highlight underserved communities that Hollywood has not done in the past.
How did Hollywood miss the mark, though? Because when we look at the numbers and we see the power of the black dollar being in the trillions, and we see black viewership and the consumption of content from a black audience being unparalleled, right, in how we respond to content, 1 + 1 should equal 2, right? So how did Hollywood miss that mark?
Well, it's recent that Hollywood has really started to understand that there's an economic imperative to reaching these audiences that did not exist before. You talk about the $1 trillion that black dollars have access to and that they spend, but that was not something, that black buying power was not something that was discussed 10, 15 years ago in the way that it is now. And so it meant there was an opportunity for somebody like me. The next thing that Hollywood has to do is to put people in positions of power, the decision makers, right? So not just the folks in front of the camera, that's very, very important. Now we need more folks behind the camera. We need more Will Packers. We need more black directors, and most importantly, we need more black studio execs who are greenlighting these films. We still have a long way to go in terms of Hollywood when it comes to real diversity and inclusion behind the scenes and within the traditional power structures that Hollywood subscribes to.
So the real power is also behind the viewfinder.
That's right.
Coming up on 11Alive Uninterrupted, the legendary filmmaker pays homage to the city of Atlanta, where he's filmed many of his record-breaking movies. He explains how the city is fueling new energy behind his new film and what he's doing to change the traditional narrative of the black experience in Hollywood.
When the people who are supposed to work for you
work against you, we're here.
Looking deep into the issues affecting you.
Our exclusive investigation found hundreds of elevators across Metro Atlanta could be dangerous.
Questioning authority.
Making sure promises offered
This is a bill that could stand to help every Georgian.
are promises kept.
11Alive investigates immediate solutions.
Demanding answers to help make life better.
Because for every problem,
There is a solution. 11Alive News.
Atlanta has been the landscape of a lot of your films. You have poured so much into this city, and this city has embraced you as well. Tell me about the magic of this city and how content creating kind of elevated because of the Black Mecca.
Yeah. I love Atlanta. I have been here for a very long time. I went to school in Tallahassee at Florida A&M University. I left FAMU and moved right to Atlanta, and I've always lived here primarily since then. And this is back before Hollywood realized how great Atlanta was, before there was a tax incentive, before there was so much production here. And I was shooting here, and one of the things I loved about this market was the backdrop. It's so many different looks. You can do rural, you can do urban, you can do metropolitan. I love the people in the community. There's such a diversity of folks here. And I loved it for bringing actors in because there are people from all over that come to Atlanta that create the Atlanta culture. So it feels like a southern city with international flair and flavor. And that is still very much what I love about Atlanta. Everything I just said still holds true today. You just now have a lot more people that realize it. And that's a good thing because our infrastructure has grown, more productions are happening here, and I'm proud to be a small part of that. So I'll continue to tell stories in Atlanta. Praise This is very authentically Atlanta. A lot of stuff is said in Atlanta that is, you know, Atlanta doubling for someplace else in the world or out of this world. But with Praise This, it's real Atlanta showcasing real Atlanta. I don't care if we're talking about the Trap Museum or New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. We are showing actual Atlanta locations and highlighting them, and I'm very proud of that for the city that I love.
And you could feel that energy too, because within the storytelling, there were so many things remnant of what makes Atlanta Atlanta. And I think the magic of me having grown up here was, I came from Africa, right? We came to Atlanta, Georgia, and it was a city where minorities were the majority. And it felt like the energy of Africa within itself. Tell us about how the energy and the presence of that cultivation of Black excellence kind of hands us our crown and says, here you go, it's been purchased by your ancestors.
You know, that's a great way to say it, and it is the Black Mecca. And it is a place, when you have a market where you have a minority community that are in positions of power, it creates a safe space for not just that community, but other disenfranchised communities. Atlanta, to me, feels like very much a safe space, right? Even if you look at the greater state of Georgia, Atlanta is its own bubble, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can't go too far outside. Now, you better be careful. They might be waiting for you with some rebel flags. But in Atlanta, it's a very progressive, forward-thinking, diverse city. I love the fact that we have an African-American mayor. I love the fact that, you know, whether you're talking about police officers or fire people or folks that work in the service industries, you're always going to see a diversity of people. You're going to see everybody in Atlanta. That's important. I wanted my kids to be raised here. I wanted them to see that because it matters. That representation matters because the decisions that are made are based on people who don't all think like the majority culture elsewhere in the country. That's a good thing. So it's one of the things I enjoy about Atlanta. I love you making the reference to the continent of Africa. I got an opportunity to shoot there last year in South Africa. That was really cool. I want to go back and shoot over there again. It's important just to have that representation on screen, but it also allows me to have people in positions of authority behind the scenes, because in Atlanta, I've got them. I've got somebody that can fill every role because I've got qualified folks and technicians of every stripe.
Next on 11Alive Uninterrupted, Will Packer credits the contributions of historically Black colleges and universities, how he's giving back, and providing resources to the next generation.
Breaking news right now.
This whole thing was engulfed in flames instantly.
11Alive uncovered law enforcement agencies clearing cases without even making an arrest.
This is not okay. I want him to be arrested.
And Atlanta, you know, the geographical landscape of being able to shoot in so many different areas within the state of Georgia, within Atlanta itself, it's like, what really separates us in Atlanta is access, opportunity, and resources.
Sure.
You can look at, you know, Bankhead to Buckhead and see it's a few miles away, but it looks like two different worlds,
Sure.
right? Your passion for pouring back into the education systems, HBCUs, I mean, you know, whether it's the school you graduated from or whether it's Morehouse, tell us about bridging that economic gap so that every kid has a chance to really chase their dreams.
Yeah, it's really important that when you come from a community like I do, which historically has not been on equivalent economic footing. Right. It's important that folks like myself who have been able to go have success don't just go and take those dollars out of the community. Right. That's not who I am. It's not how I was raised, and it's not how we as a people are going to succeed. I have to go and give back. I have to go and hire young African-American filmmakers that would not have an opportunity via Hollywood. I got to put them to work on my sets. I got to let them do interns. I have to be a part of programs like the Amazing Stories Foundation, which brings young crafts folks from around the city of Atlanta and puts them on real Hollywood production and lets them see how a production works. I have to get back to HBCUs, which, historically have always fostered the best and brightest minds around the country. I need to be a part of not just being an example by what I'm doing, but also putting my dollars where my heart is, and also encouraging others of my peers to do the same thing. I'm very proud of that.
And what advice do you have for who could step into your shoes one day or find their own shoes in, achieving a fraction or whatever was meant for them in success?
Number one, I say find your own path, right? Will Packer's path is not anybody else's path but mine. And we all do that. We all fall guilty sometimes of looking at what somebody else has done and comparing ourselves, especially in the age of social media. We're always looking and look what they did, look what she did, look what he did. I need to be there. I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough yet. Not true. Your journey is your journey and nobody else's is yours. And so you have to be your harshest critic, but also your number one fan. And so what I encourage somebody who wants to be the next Will Packer is, first of all, be the first you and never, ever give up, because that's the key. It's not the people who are the smartest, the fastest, and have the most money, and that's not the most successful people I know. The most successful people I know are those that work the hardest and who never, ever, ever gave up. That's the secret. It is simple as that. You never, ever give up. What is for you is for you.
Still to come on 11Alive Uninterrupted. How does Will Packer do it all? The star producer breaks down his work-life balance and unravels his many roles as a father, husband, filmmaker, community member, and a black man in America.
You have to kind of always have your armor up.
I'm sorry, but we're not hiring any black people today.
It's kind of just like that moment where I was like, oh, I am different. I'm kind of just telling you what my experience is. If you feel uncomfortable doing it, maybe you should examine why that is.
Streaming now, only on 11Alive Plus.
The city doesn't stop when you go to sleep.
That's why we're up early.
Early.
Tracking breaking news,
Traffic and weather.
Preparing you before you get out of bed.
so you can start your day a step ahead. When the people who are supposed to work for you
Work against you? We're here.
Looking deep into the issues affecting you.
Our exclusive investigation found hundreds of elevators across Metro Atlanta could be dangerous.
Questioning authority.
Making sure promises offered
This is a bill that could stand to help every Georgian.
are promises kept.
11Alive investigates immediate solutions. Demanding answers to help make life better.
Because for every problem,
There is a solution. 11Alive News.
How do you balance your career, your personal life, and so much in the headlines impacts us as a black community?
Sure.
With what's happening in our communities, from homelessness to poverty to crime to politics to so many different things. How do you balance being a filmmaker and also just being a black man in America as well?
I don't think those two are different. I think they are intrinsically linked. I am a black man who is a filmmaker, who is a father, who is a husband. All those things define Will Packer. I can't choose to segment and just be one of them at any one time. I can't do that. I don't have that privilege. What I have to do is realize that all those things make me who I am and influence the decisions that I make. How can I be a better father while being a filmmaker? How, as a filmmaker, can I put images on there that make my community better? All of that is intertwined, and I accept that. And I think it's a privilege to tell the stories that I tell, but it's also a big responsibility that I take very seriously. And so when I choose a story, I'm thinking about my audience, I'm thinking about my community, and I'm thinking about the impact. Doesn't mean that every story has to be a history lesson, doesn't mean that every story has to be heavy or dramatic, but every story, I have to be aware of the images. If you look at Praise This, I have 2 present black fathers in that movie, and I'm very proud of that. That's not an image that we see enough. It's not a big deal. Nothing's made about it. They don't talk about it. It's not a big speech about it. No, but they're there, and images have power. And so that was important to have that. That's just one example of something that I put into a movie, and it normalizes it, because the present black father is not something that Hollywood has put forward in their imagery for a very long time.
And it's on us to continue shaping our own narratives.
Very well said.
Yes, thank you so much for sitting down with us for NBC Atlanta's 11Alive for 11Alive Uninterrupted. We appreciate your time and wish you many, many, many more years of success.
Thank you so much.